So for this exercise, we're going to be going over a staggered stance hinge. The main goal of this exercise is to really learn how to open up the back of our hip, which is going to help to lengthen our glutes and teach our glutes to work, but also can help with a lot of hip mobility, especially into flexion and internal rotation. So what we're going to do is I'm going to stand to the side here. The easiest way to get into position, kind of the starting position we're going to need, is just to stand normal. Go ahead and just pick up one leg from the ground. Bend your standing knee just a little bit, and then without letting anything change position, just put your toes down behind you on the ground very lightly. Now in this position, you should feel your midfoot. That's gonna be right at like the front inner portion of your heel, the ball of your big toe, and the ball of your pinky toe. You wanna be centered right between those 3 points. You don't wanna be too far to the toes, and you don't wanna be too far on just the heel. So in that position, same side leg, we're gonna lift our hand and go ahead and put it on our tush, and then our opposite hand's gonna come across to the front of our hip. So we're using both hands to kind of sandwich this hip, and I like to put this hand right in the hip crease, okay? I'll see a lot of people almost put it up here like in their abdominal cavity. We definitely want it more at the hip crease, okay? So once again, once we're in that position, all we are gonna do is think about keeping our weight centered right in that spot. That weight never really changes this entire exercise. It stays right in the midfoot. Our spine is gonna stay nice and long, and we are just gonna think about folding right over our front hand here, or using our front hand to push our hips back behind us. My spine is staying nice and long, and then I come right back up. Okay, I just want you to start with just the general motion. Using this front hand, softening the tissues in the front of your hip, and you're just kind of folding over that hand, pushing your hip straight back behind you while keeping your weight centered in the foot. Knee stays still this whole time, and all the way back up, okay? I want you to almost think that as you're going into the hinge, your hand on your tush should feel like it's going towards the back wall. And then as you stand up, it should feel like it's translating forward towards the front wall. So once again, just here, hinging, pushing my hip back. And as my hip goes back farther, it just causes my chest to come down with it, okay? But it's not just because I'm just bending my chest forward, it's I'm hinging at my hips, which is just causing the head to come down with it, okay? And come on back up. Now, if you're doing it right, what you should feel is, first of all, a lot of probably foot and calf really holding you in that position, but then you should also start to feel some lengthening or some tissues stretching right in the back of your hip, but also working to kind of stabilize there and to stand you back up, okay? I'm gonna turn to the other side just so you can see again. I'm going to pick up one leg, bend my knee just a little bit, don't let anything move, put my toes behind me, okay? I feel my midfoot, same side hand on my tush, opposite hand on the front of my hip, and I'm staying nice and neutral here. What I mean by that is I'm not letting my trunk over twist. I'll see this often. And my pelvis is really facing straight forward. So if you kind of picture your pubic bone, it is pointing straight to the wall, or maybe just slightly towards the standing leg, okay? Just a little bit, don't overdo it. Now, once again, I am just going straight back behind, keeping a nice neutral spine, hinging back, and all the way up. The eventual goal is that as you keep doing this, we are going to slowly keep working on pushing the hip back farther and farther and farther and farther and farther, and I'm just focused on the hip going back. This front hand pushing the hip back more. And it's pushing that hip crease right where it's starting farther back. And as I'm doing that, I'm slowly getting almost parallel to the ground, meaning my trunk is almost parallel to the ground. And I can really feel my glutes lengthened here, but also kind of working to hold me. And then I'm gonna use those glutes to push me back up. The whole time my weight is centered right in the middle of that foot. Okay, I'm not really letting it switch from like the front of my foot to my heel. It is staying there the entire time, which is why my calf is on fire right now. So this is a complicated movement. Once you get it down, it is one of the best things you can do. But I want to go over a few compensations I see in the clinic all the time, because most likely when you first start off, you'll be doing one of these things. So first thing is, as you get into the position, instead of the knee staying still and not really moving, what people will do is they'll let the knee translate backwards with them, which is gonna feel like you're getting a hamstring stretch, but you're also gonna feel more weight on the back of the heel. Okay, so just once again, if you're feeling hamstrings, most likely as your hips are going back, your knee is going back with it, and your weight is going to your heel, or maybe even your opposite leg. Okay, so watch out for that. We wanna make sure weight stays centered, and if you keep that weight centered, you really can't allow that knee to move backwards. Okay, so that's one compensation. The next one is that people will almost get squatty. So what I mean by that is, instead of their hip pretty much staying at this level the entire time and going straight back to the wall behind them, they will squat down. Okay, their hip will actually get lower to the ground. You might feel some glute with this, but it's not what we're going for. So just think about, as you're hinging back, weight stays centered in that foot, and I want you to think there is a drawer that is right at the level of your hips, and you're trying to use your hips to close that drawer behind you, okay? If your butt drops down, you're never gonna close that drawer. So kind of give yourself that visual. So that's the second compensation. Another one is people will over-rotate. So what I mean by that is that as they are starting their motion, they're gonna be over-rotated towards the leg they're standing on, or maybe even the opposite, kind of opened up, okay? Make sure hips stay stable, or sorry, not stable, straight forward. And then the other rotational component people will do is they will start to almost rotate their trunk. Can you see how you can kind of see my opposite shoulder here as they go down? I want us to feel like our shoulders are staying square the whole time as we hinge straight back behind us. Okay, so either think about the shoulders, or another cue I like to use is, I actually have a line on my carpet here. I will set up my middle toe with that line, and that line continues out the back side of my heel. I will think about my back hand, or the back of my hip, is traveling straight back on that line, and that'll really keep the hips from probably jutting out to the side, which I'll see a lot. So just make sure you're aware of that. Okay, last thing, I know this is a lot, but I'll see people moving their spine, whether that's as they're hinging back, they're overarching, head is like super extended and they're really arching through their low back. That's just you getting the movement from a different part of your body instead of the hip, so watch out for that. Really think about opening up your space between your lower ribs and pelvis. If you're an overextender, that'll help to lengthen you through the spine to help straighten you out here, okay? Last thing is, as people are slowly going farther and farther into the motion, they'll stop actually moving from their hips, and they'll just keep bending at their spine. This is not a hinge, okay? We wanna make sure the back stays neutral, and every inch of movement that happens is coming from the hip moving back. And if you feel like you can't move that hip back any farther, that's where you stop and stand back up. Don't just keep going forward just because it's most likely coming from your spine. All right, so that is the overall goal with this, is that we continue to open and lengthen the glutes on the back side of the hip until we can get into a more neutral, a kind of parallel to the ground position, and then we'll start to load it up with some weight. So doesn't take many of these. You should feel a lot of muscles working. Do a few on each side, switch back and forth about 3 sets.